So it's always so like we're going years on this, and it
Yeah.
seems like nothing changes. We're always going to be terrified every time you guys come to Lincoln. But this time it's different, right? You go from coach of the year to hot seat to kind of hot seat this year to oh my god, these guys might be pretty good. Like who's this team and who's this coach?
Yeah, it's been a pretty
How about
impressive
his
run
two and
they've
a half
had.
years, right?
Yeah, you're right. He was coach of the year. Then last year they really fell off, and a lot of people thought, with the new stadium next year, this year he'd really have to prove it, and he was a bit on the hot seat. He started showing up on some coaching hot seat lists
Yeah.
earlier in the season, but since then, they lost that opener. They looked terrible against Tulane, turned the ball over 5 times, and got off to a really bad start. But since then, their only loss is to Oregon, and they've won 4 in a row now. And I think more than anything, they found their identity. They are running the football. They always play solid defense. That's always a given. And they're once again a fundamentally sound unit. They stop the run. They really make you earn any scores. And then they're really running the football. The last 2 weeks, they had 50 rushes against Purdue. The week before against Penn State, 42. So they're really committed to the ground game. Then they get that play action pass going, and they really kind of found their identity the last few weeks. And yeah, they're sitting there in that log jam in the Big Ten with a bunch of other teams, and things are looking up. They won 4 in a row.
So Louie, you mentioned that defense, and I watched a couple of their games. I watched that Oregon game, and I've watched Oregon pretty closely. Them and Indiana are about the only defenses that made life even a little bit difficult on the Ducks. What does Northwestern do so well defensively that even when facing competition like Oregon, where they're out-athleted, that they can still give them such a difficult time?
Yeah, well, they're a bend but don't break unit. So they will give you yards between the 20s, but they'll stiffen in the red zone. And their goal is to make you go, 10, 12, 14 plays or something like that if you're going to score on them. They keep everything in front of them. They're a very fundamentally sound unit. Everybody's where they're supposed to be. In the back end, they like to play a lot of cover 4, keep things in front of you, and don't give up the big play. And like I said, make you earn it down the field. And that's what they do. They're a very steady unit, and they're betting that you'll have a negative play or a penalty or something like that to put you behind the chains, and you'll have to kick it back to them. That's what they do. That's been their MO for a long time, even under Pat Fitzgerald when they had Mike Hankwitz as the defensive coordinator. It's the same now with Tim McGargle as the defensive coordinator. They play that bend but don't break unit. They're very fundamentally sound. They play smart football. That's what they do.
Hard to throw it over their head, so you have to be patient. Are you pretty surprised, or did you kind of feel that when he's putting this staff together and it's kind of been piece by piece that they would have the resolve and kind of gel the way they have, given how the last 30 months have gone?
Yeah, it was kind of a surprise. There were some interesting people there, and they brought in a second offensive line coach this year, which was everybody's kind of scratching their heads about. And they have a couple. Tim McGargle still handles linebackers. They have like an extra defensive assistant in there. There's a few kind of curious things there, but it has really come together. And like I said, I think especially these last few weeks, they've really found their identity. They know who they are. And that's the way they're going to play, and they're going to make you beat them. They're very confident in what they're going to do, and it's not exciting football. They're not going to score 50 points on anybody, but they're going to try to grind you, shorten the game, limit possessions, and beat you that way in a tight, low-scoring game. That's what they've been doing.
Louie, what have you thought about Preston Stone at quarterback? Obviously, they have taken some things off his plate in terms of what the offense is being asked to do with running the football, but how do you think he's performed? As you mentioned, that play action's become a pretty important part of their offense.
Yeah, so he got off to just a horrendous start. I mean,
Sure
it was
did.
that first game. My God,
Mm-hmm.
he had 8 interceptions in his career. He threw 4 in the season opener against Tulane, and he really had a rough go. The first couple of weeks, he had some bad turnovers, and even like dropping the football and things like that. But he's kind of found himself and his role in this offense. You know, they've committed to the run, and he's been a little smarter with the football, and they're running that play action and things like that. I don't think, you know, he feels like he has to win a game for them anymore. You know, that if he stays within the offense, they're going to run the football and beat you that way. He got in, I tell you, last week, he had a couple throws that could have been picked off. They got kind of lucky there. That, you know, he had one interception, and it could have been a couple more. When he gets pressure, his mechanics tend to, you know, fall away. He'll throw off his back foot and things like that, and that's something he's really got to guard against. You know, ball security is paramount when you want to, you know, run the football and shorten the game and things like that. You can't give the ball up. So that's something that's, you know, it's still a bit of a concern, but he's been much, much better. And, you know, he's got an arm. He can make all the throws, and he's got some mobility. He can do some things, extending plays. You know, he's not a great runner, but he can extend plays and move around in that pocket. So he's an ideal quarterback for him. He just got to, you know, make sure he takes care of the football.
That's interesting, too, because one of my keys when we'll do them Thursday is when Nebraska gets their hands on interception-worthy balls, they've got to catch it, right? Because a lot of times these guys haven't come up with balls that he's put in harm's way, and it's almost uncanny over the last 3 or 4 weeks how you guys convert those drives into points, it seems. Right? You're not scoring a ton, but when defenses let you guys off the hook, you look up and like 5 or 6 more minutes have come off the clock. Is it just a mindset? Is it? I mean, I get it. Caleb's gotten going in the backfield, but it just seems like when you don't make Northwestern pay the price, inevitably it comes back to haunt you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And they are committed to that ground game, right? So even like Penn State, they had 42 carries, only 119 yards. You know, they kept at it, and they wore them down. And in the fourth quarter is when they won the game. You know, they are committed to it. Last week they had 50 carries. They had 38. I'm reading them here: 38 against Louisiana Monroe, 42 against UCLA. So they're going to run the football. That's what they do. And you know, getting back to those interceptions, getting their hand on the ball, I thought the last few weeks here, Northwestern's wide receivers have been outstanding as defensive backs when they need to be. Like there were uncanny. Some balls that, yeah, they come back and they slap it away, or they knock it away, or they hit them and jar the ball loose. So they've really made some plays there that saved the potential, you know, turnover.
Louie, if this game goes Northwestern's way, kind of paint me a picture of what that looks like. Obviously, running the football, playing good defense. I'm guessing making Nebraska inefficient in the red zone. What else does that look like for Northwestern if this game goes the way they want it to?
I mean, you just gave me the Northwestern game plan right there.
The red zone is interesting because it's strength on non. Nebraska has not been able to generate touchdowns.
Yeah,
and Northwestern isn't giving them up.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's what they do. Kind of they're not as good, I think, on the offensive end, scoring touchdowns. They settle for a lot of field goals, but that's their goal on that end. And then defensively, if you do get in the red zone, they're going to try to limit you to 3 points. They get really tough in that condensed area. You know, you don't have a lot of room to work with, and that's where they excel. You know, they are where they're supposed to be, and they're going to make you earn it. So, but yeah, that's exactly what they want to do. I think, you know, I watched the Nebraska-Minnesota game because it was on Friday night last week, and you know, Minnesota had that 14-play, 98-yard drive.
Oh, the backbreaker.
And that's what Northwestern wants to do right there. Just eat the clock and grind it down and move the chains and get down there and score. And that's their MO right there. And, you know, I also saw that they sacked Raiola 9 times in that game. So that's another thing. I'm sure they're going to try to get after him and make him uncomfortable in the pocket.
Louie, let me ask you something since you know a lot about both teams. Do the folks in Evanston with the kind of newfound buzz in the stadium and what's going on with development, is one eye looking over at Champaign, or are you guys good there in terms of being secure?
What do you mean looking at
like you know, like what Illinois is doing is like, oh, it would be nice.
Oh,
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they're secure with who they are and what they are as a program. I don't think there's any envy there. Illinois has gotten the better of them a few times here. Brett Bielema's been successful against Northwestern. So sure, that's a game they want to win. It's a trophy game. It's really their only rival that they have. So that's one, Northwestern circles every year. It's the last game of the season, and that's a big one in terms of pride and everything. But no, I think, Northwestern right now is in a good place. They feel like the team is surging at the right time. They've won 4 in a row. A bowl game, which, a couple weeks ago didn't look that great when they were sitting at 1-2. And all these games stacked up, and it didn't go as planned, right? So they lost to Tulane badly in an opener, and then if you told me beginning of the season they beat Penn State at Penn State, there's no way I would have believed that. So it's been a little unconventional, but here they are, winners of 4 in a row, and sitting at 5-2, and they got a bowl game, looks like a pretty solid thing here, and who knows? They could make some noise here, and if they can string a couple more wins together.
Let me ask you something going back, because that game was on as we were doing the pregame, and I'm speaking to Penn State. Was that kind of the resolve game? Because that was kind of before it really all the way went south for Penn State. It didn't always look great during that game, but you hung in there longer than they did on the road. Like, is that any sort of signature moment, or did you see something coming before then?
Well, they had been playing well. I thought, that UCLA game that, they beat them 17-14. Everybody kind of rolled their eyes because UCLA hadn't won a game yet. But since then, UCLA has been a pretty good team. That was a pretty decent win. Then they routed Louisiana Monroe like they're supposed to do. But that Penn State game, to me, really showed this team's resilience. Yeah. They lost the lead 3 times in that game. They let up some big plays. They had a muffed punt that eventually turned into a touchdown. They had a punt blocked in the first quarter. They had a 67-yard play that led to another touchdown that they gave up. So they had big plays against them. They lost the lead 3 times, and all 3 times they came back and won the game. And if you watch that game, I thought they were the more physical team on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And that really surprised me. And yeah, this is not what we expected from Penn State, and they were certainly struggling. But that was an impressive win. That was kind of a signature win for David Braun, I thought. Going into State College and beating them any year is a feather in your cap. So that was a big win for them, and it really showed, like you said, their resolve, I think, in that game.
That's Louie Vaccher from Wildcat Report. Louie, appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Louie.
All right, thanks for your time.
See you
guys.
soon.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah.